Imagine you are standing in the heart of the Atchafalaya Basin at 4 in the afternoon. The humidity is a physical weight on your chest, and the air smells of sulfur and decaying cypress. You are with your brother, who is walking just 50 yards ahead of you on a narrow strip of dry land. You look down at your compass for 10 seconds. Just 10 seconds. And when you look up, he is gone. There was no struggle, and there was no sound of a splash in the black water surrounding that ridge. You call his name, but the only thing that answers you is a sudden and deafening silence from the woods. The cicadas that were screaming moments ago have completely cut out. It is as if the swamp itself just held its breath and swallowed him whole. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I am Dave Paulides. Today, we are venturing into the Southern Swamplands to discuss what I call the Bayou mysteries. These are cases that defy the standard logic of search and rescue and leave even the most veteran woodsmen shaking their heads. I am here to state the facts as I have found them in the records. I have spent years tracking a phenomenon known as Missing 411. This isn't about people who simply get lost or have an accident. This is about a specific set of profile points that appear globally but are terrifyingly concentrated in the American South. We are talking about Louisiana and Florida and the deep marshes of Mississippi. The authorities do not want to talk about these patterns. Let us look at our first case involving a 3-year-old boy named Rowan Grifton. Rowan was with his family in a dense, marshy area when he vanished in a literal heartbeat. The search that followed was massive and included thermal imaging and hundreds of volunteers on the ground. Yet for 3 days, that boy was nowhere to be found in a very small search radius. When Rowan was finally located, he was standing in waist-deep water in a section of the swamp that had been cleared 10 times. He was remarkably dry from the waist up and showed no signs of panic. When investigators asked him how he survived, he told them a giant figure had protected him. He said a man was peeking from behind the trees and luring him deeper. Now, some people will tell you that a 3-year-old has an overactive imagination. But let us look at the facts of the Missing 411 profile. How does a toddler survive 3 nights in alligator-infested waters without a single scratch or bite? How did he stay warm when a massive thunderstorm rolled in the night he vanished? The canine units wouldn't even put their noses to the ground. This brings us to a second case in the Honey Island swamp involving an experienced hunter. This man lived in the bayou and he knew every cypress knee and every alligator hole for miles. He tied his boat up perfectly and he left his rifle inside the craft. He walked into the brush and he simply ceased to exist in our reality. When they found him weeks later, his body was miles away in a thicket of briars so dense that it took hours to cut him out. There were no broken branches leading into that thicket, and his clothes were not torn. It was as if he had been lowered from the sky directly into the center of a cage. This is a recurring profile point in these mysteries. Let us talk about the third case involving a surveyor in the Florida Everglades. He was working with a crew and was never more than 100 feet from his partners. One man turned to grab a stake, and when he turned back, the surveyor was gone. No footprints were found in the soft mud, and no scent was ever picked up. I have requested the records for these cases through the Freedom of Information Act. And every time I hit a brick wall with the Department of the Interior, they claim they do not keep track of missing persons in these clusters. I find that highly suspicious for an agency that tracks every single tree and every single bear in the park system. When you look at the map of these disappearances, you see clusters that center around water. Specifically black water and stagnant bayous. There is always a strange weather event that follows the disappearance. A storm rolls in and it scrubs the earth clean of any physical evidence or scent trails that a dog could follow. It happens too often to be a coincidence. We also have to address the silence in the woods. Time and again, witnesses in the Bayou mysteries report a complete loss of ambient sound. They call it a dead zone, where the birds stop chirping and the wind stops blowing. This suggests a localized atmospheric change that happens right before a person vanishes from the face of the earth. I want to introduce a theory that is difficult for many to accept. But the facts lead us to a disturbing possibility regarding invisible entities. Throughout the South, there are legends of the Shimmering people, or things that move in the trees like a distortion. Witnesses have described seeing a ripple in the air that looks like light bending around an object. This would explain why the canine units are absolutely terrified to track in these areas. Dogs can sense things outside of our visual spectrum. If there is an entity that can mask its presence and move silently through the swamp, it would explain the lack of footprints. It would also explain how victims are moved to impossible locations without disturbing the brush. Are there dimensional portals or thin places in these ancient swamplands? Is something reaching out from a place we cannot see and plucking people off of dry land? I am not telling you what to believe, but I am telling you that the alligator theory does not hold water. Alligators do not leave rifles leaning against trees, and they do not hide bodies in briar patches. The locals in the deep bayous have spoken about these spirits for generations. They call them the swamp walkers, or things that belong to the mist. We often dismiss these stories as folklore, but my research shows that the folklore is based on a very grim reality. People are going missing in ways that science cannot yet explain. If you are planning a trip to the Southern Swamplands, I urge you to be extremely cautious. Do not go out alone, and always carry a personal locator beacon even if you think you know the area. If the woods go silent and the birds stop singing, you need to get back to your vehicle immediately. Do not wait to see what caused the silence. The government will not warn you about these clusters, but the data does not lie. There is something happening in the shadows of the cypress trees that we are not being told about. I will continue to dig into the archives, and I will continue to bring you these accounts. The victims and their families deserve to have the truth told. I am Dave Paulides, and I am just stating the facts. Thank you for listening and for supporting the research into the missing 411 phenomenon. Please keep your eyes open and stay safe out there in the wild. We will see you in the next video.